Hi everyone. Good morning. Uh, I am Rattan, and I'm an assistant conservator at Intact Conservation Institute. Along with me is my former colleague Rupal Jain, and she was a research officer at Intact Conservation Institute. And we are delighted to present our study, which is entitled True Colors, Unveiled Science of Degradation and Science of Shifting Colors and Non-Destructive Analysis of Lead-Based Pigment, Lead Pigment Degradation in India. Next. No. Yes. So before beginning our presentation, we would like to extend our thank you to the following people. This project was possible because of the generous support of the Intact Conservation Institute in New Delhi. Although Intact is a well-renowned organization in India, I would like to introduce it to you as well. Intact stands for Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage. It is a non-profit organization that was established in 1984. Intact Conservation Institute is a subdivision of the organization. It focuses on the conservation and restoration of art and material heritage. ICI centers are present in different parts of India: New Delhi, Bangalore, Lucknow, Kolkata, Bhubaneswar, wherein we work on different kinds of art objects pertaining to only material and material heritage. We also work on sites. We have a lot of on-site projects. Then we also work in the lab where I'm sitting today. So then we would extend our sincere gratitude to Mr. M.L. Garg and Brijvasi Art Press Limited for granting us permission to conduct research on their collection and publish the findings. We are deeply appreciative of unwavering support and guidance provided by Mr. Nilab Sinha, the Principal Director, Intact Conservation Institute, New Delhi, Ms. Merin Anil, the Center Coordinator, Intact Conservation Institute, New Delhi, and Mr. Shubroto Sen, the Senior Coordinator, Intact Conservation Institute, New Delhi. Additionally, we would like to express our heartfelt thanks to our colleague, Ms. Chetna Dogra, Assistant Conservator, Intact Conservation Institute, Delhi, for her invaluable assistance and contribution to this research. We would also like to extend a heartfelt thank you to the NICAS team for providing us this platform. Like they said, we was going to present at the YAP conference. And thank you to you that we are getting this opportunity to present our research with all of you today. Okay, so next, sorry, 1 second, sorry. Uh, okay, so now starting with our presentation. So we received a set of paintings in the month of September last year that were from Mr. Emil Garg. So a set of painting came into the lab that had similar type of technique of painting and also similar type of degradation patterns. So I would like to draw your attention to this painting on the right of your computer screens. If you see that there are people or men standing in a court and they're all dressed very well, very royally, but their turbans and clothes look very muddy. So, of course, if they're standing in the court, they won't be wearing such dirty clothes. So all this grayish tone or grayish colorant that you see on the clothes of these attendants, it is the alteration that happened in the lead-based pigment, which is the red lead in the painting. So then this discoloration uh, was something that we saw in most of these paintings, and thus it came to our mind. Rupal and I were very fascinated and curious about how and what was happening in these paintings. So for that, we then did a lot of analysis and studied the degradation pattern a bit more than just creating these paintings. So we are going to discuss more about that in the other slides. Next. So now coming on to the objectives of our research. We followed a five-step methodical approach. So in order to investigate these paintings. So the first our primary objective was to investigate the degradation. We aim to identify patterns of degradation in the paintings to better inform and plan our conservation treatment. We needed to understand how and why these pigments were changing color. This led us to our second objective, the analysis. We conducted a thorough study to understand the changes in the optical properties of the pigments and characterize the chromatic alteration. Crucially, we employed a non-invasive approach for all our pigment characterization to ensure the work was not harmed in the process. Our third objective was documentation. So we meticulously recorded every step and every spectral variation that was happening in the altered and the unaltered pigments. This documentation is essential not only for our study, but for future research in this avenue. Next, we focused on evaluation. We plan to study the effectiveness of our conservation intervention through a comparative spectral analysis, looking at the areas of the painting both before and after the treatment. This step allows us to scientifically validate our methods. Finally, our last objective is dissemination. Our goal is to contribute to the art history and conservation science fields by sharing our findings. This is what we are doing today. Before we get into more details about the study, I would like to talk a bit about Indian miniature paintings, how to classify them, and the technique that was used to make these paintings. It is very essential for us to understand the technique because miniature paintings, so these paintings that we got have a very similar stylistic. So the paintings that we got had a very similar technique that was used to make these paintings, and thus we can. Thus it is imperative for us to understand what Indian miniature paintings are. So Indian miniature paintings are unlike the Unlike the European or Western miniatures, these paintings are not about, so the miniature word does not come from the scale of the painting, uh, but the pigment that is used in the painting. So the miniature comes from the word minium, which is another term for red lead. It was often used in these paintings. It is a mineral pigment, um, and it was used in both the initial stages or the drawings of the paintings till the final coloring or the painting of the paint layer. The origin of this painting style is very, so the painting style of these paintings, their origin has different theories. Some say that it came from Persia and it was brought to India by the Mughals, but others say that it was indigenous and it originated in India by Jain manuscripts. Like you can see in the image on the left, that these started as illustrations of the manuscript and not as standalone paintings, but over time they became an individual artistic style in their own. These paintings later transformed. So these paintings were so popular that uh, this led to different art schools or different schools of art came into light, like Rajasthani school of miniature, Pahadi school of miniature. In later medieval era, you also have Sikh miniature paintings. And when the British came to India, they also adopted this type of painting technique and they started painting. That school is also known as company school of painting. So I want to say that Indian miniature paintings were uh, we cannot say that what the origin was, but we can, of course, say that it was an amalgam of both Jain illustrations and Persian Mughal illustrations. Okay, next. So now that we know that these paintings, uh, th- so now that we know that the paintings were made, how they originated, it is also essential to understand how these paintings were made. So, what was the material and technique behind this? So, any Indian traditional art is not an individualistic, or an individual is not made by an individual artist. It is a work of uh, a group of people. So, usually family, because the family, so the family of these artists, so the actually what happened is that the painting method was passed on to generations. So usually a group of people in the family um, used to make these paintings. So if you can see in the image, there are a group of people. So one is making the paper. The paper in miniature painting, or the support in miniature painting, is known as Vasli. So Vasli is a support which is made by joining different layers of paper together, and in order to provide more sturdy and um, a more sturdy support to the paint layer paint layer, and a more smoother support for the paint layer. Vasli literally means in Persian, it literally means to join something together. So that's how the word Vasli comes. Then after that, if you see, there's one person who's drawing the initial drawing. After that, somebody is applying ground onto the surface. After that, a person is making uh, under drawings, or a basic outline of the thing. And then after that, another artist used to color the areas that was marked. Later on, if you see in the image there, where you can see different steps of coloring. So first they used to apply flat colors, and then do gradation, and then they started in introducing more details into these paintings. So after that, uh, once this was done, then ornamentation work uh, was done onto these paintings. So something like these green gems that you see, or gemstones that you see in the painting, are not actually gemstones. They are beetle wings. So usually found in Himalayan regions of India. These beetle wings look like emeralds, so these were used in order to ornate these paintings. So minuscule pearls were also added into the paintings, and also silver and golden leaf were added. Although these paintings are tempera in nature, so these paintings are tempera in nature. So the binding medium of the binding medium of these pigments was gum acacia in most cases. But when the ornamentation was done in the images, in the figures, animal glue was used in order to give more strength and support uh, to the ornamentation. Then moti and mahwar was done. Literally translates to pearl, and mahwar is the red henna type thing, also known as alta, that was applied onto the hands and feet of the figures. This was all done in the later stages of the painting. Then you see the last person who's sitting there is a binder who is binding the manuscript, because usually these paintings were illustrations and were in the manuscripts itself. It was only in the later stage that these paintings originate began to come as an individual artwork. Okay, next. Um, so I would also like to talk about how the patronage shifted in India. So uh, in the earlier stages of miniature painting, the patronage was given by the royals and the nobility, and later on it shifted to more individual wealthy people. So it was not feasible for the artists to then work in families, but the artwork, or the execution of artwork, began to so it began to be a more individual art form, because it was not feasible for the people So it was not feasible for the family to work on this. Because why is it important? I will tell you, because we are going to discuss about this, because different things contribute to how our paintings uh, tend to degrade. So now these paintings that we have, or the paintings that we got to study on, these paintings can not be called miniature painting when we are talking about the material of the paintings, because the material or the support of the painting is very different from the actual Indian miniature painting. Like I said, the original paintings, or the earlier paintings, uh, to be correct, were the ones that were made on busly. So layer of paper was joined together to make that. These paintings that we got were made on mount boards. So a ready-made mount board was uh, purchased by the patron, and that was given to the artist, and onto which these paintings were made. But if we go and study the technique, it is very similar to miniature painting. So in a technical sense, we can say that it is a miniature painting. Next. So if we see the anatomy of the painting, the painting that we have, that we got to study on, had a board, and then there was adhesive and the paper layer. All these three layers came pre-made it or ready-made from the industry itself, and onto which the ground was applied. This ground was applied in order to provide a more plain surface for the painting to be executed on, and also it reduces the porosity of paper and board, which like we know is very porous in nature otherwise, and onto which a pigment layer or the paint layer is applied. All of the steps of miniature painting that we do, or when it is executed, all the layers and all the steps are burnished properly, because this painting does not have a varnish layer in order to provide uh, the sheen or the shine in the pigment. Usually, these pigments were burnished. It also has an added bonus uh, uh, advantage, that it binds the pigment or the ground layer to the support. So it provides in better adhesion of these layers of painting. Next. Yeah, so the material used in these paintings, the paintings that we got was from Emergard, and it was better to understand about the material itself and about from him. And so we asked him, like, how did you get these paintings? Was these mount boards? Because these paintings were made or executed either before partition or just after the partition of India, which is around the 1940s and 1950s. So this was because the industries in India were not uh, established properly then, or they were just in their early phases. So these mount boards were, like he said, were probably imported from either UK or Germany. They were ready-made, economical, and less labor-intensive. So usually, so in earlier times, they used to make the wasli and then burnish it, and because it was pasted with wheat starch paste, it used to take a lot of time. This on the other hand, you had it ready-made. The board was ready-made. You just have to start painting on this. It was very good for commercial commission work, and also because these works that we are talking about were commercial based. Uh, these were commercial made works, and it was then used for printing. So, yes, it was very feasible for the artist to make it on the board rather than on the vasli itself. Um, Next. Yes, next. So, now coming to the factors of deterioration. Sorry, before that one. Yes. So now coming on to the factors of deterioration, the factors of deterioration in this object, why we needed to talk about all this technique material, it was because in order to understand how this, why was this happening? So was this an internal cause or an internal vice that was making these paintings, making these pigments change color, or was it because of some external causes? So what we understood was that it was a play of both these factors. So you had your board, which was made by wooden pulp. Usually they are made from wooden pulp, and sulfates are used to break down the lignin, which could have introduced sulfur into the painting, so the residual sulfides, or because it is a known fact that AQI of Delhi is very high throughout the year. You have the AQI hovering between 250 and 350, sometimes getting much worse and even hitting 1000 in some places. When there is more particulate in the air, these pollutants can tend to change the pigment or alter the pigment. So the this chemical equation on under the diagram tells you that how lead oxide then changes to when comes in contact. So whenever your lead pigment comes in contact with hydrogen sulfide, it changes to lead sulfide, which is what we see, which is what is seen in these in the clothes of Krishna. Okay, next. So now on to understand what the paintings that we got were. So these works were commissioned by Brajbasi Press. So they were patronizing these paintings. They were the one who gave patronage to the paintings. All these paintings had a mythological theme, religious themes depicting scenes from epics such as Mahabharata, Ramayana, and other paintings of gods and goddesses. These paintings were reproduced as prints for mass market due to the changes in the legacy of the miniature artist. These paintings also have signature of the artist. Now, finally, let us move on to the paintings from which the data were collected. I would also like to invite Rupal to take it over from here. Uh, Sorry, is Rupal here? Rupal? Okay, so I can continue till she joins. I can share my screen. Okay, 1 second. Uh, Sorry. Okay. Um, 1 second. Sorry. Uh, so sorry. 1 second. So the painting has 5 layers.
I
Uh,
do
okay.
apologize. I have just joined. There was quite a technical issue that I was experiencing. If it's all right, I'll continue.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, I'll
you
just
can
share.
share your screen.
Yeah,
You have about 5 minutes left.
yeah. All right. Just a second. Are you able to view my screen?
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. Ratan, if it's possible, could you share it?
I will share the screen. Okay,
Yeah.
1 second. Okay. So
Yeah. Thank you, Ratan. As mentioned by Ratan, these paintings had a mythological theme, and the first painting that we'll be discussing and looking at today we refer to it as Krishna Sudama, however, it's originally untitled. It depicts Lord Krishna welcoming his friend Sudama in the court. As you can see, the color of Lord Krishna's robes is grey and it has an orange undertone. A similar grayish tone can be observed towards the right side of the painting where some attendees are standing. That is the turban which has been marked in a white rectangle. Next, the other painting that we will be talking about is referred to as Chirharan. This is a popular scene from the epic Mahabharata, where a female figure is being disrobed by a man in a court full of people. The data was collected from the area marked within the white box. Next. So, the scientific examination of pigments used in miniature paintings on paper has always presented problems. Their small size and fragility, the thinness and brittleness of the paint layers make sampling undesirable and dangerous to the stability of the object. Sampling of undamaged areas is not acceptable on ethical grounds as well, and it may lead to further damage. The study took a non-invasive approach as these were tempera paintings on board and the risk of loss of pigment in form of powder was great. It was quite high. Therefore, there might have been a need of filling in or reintegrating the paint layer, which was not desired by the custodian. Then the study focused on documenting the topical information while performing preliminary examination through visible photography under normal and raking light. Digital microscopy was done to gain insight pertaining to the condition of the pigment. Next slide, please. The photomicrographs with the digital magnification of 50x display the rigid layer that had formed on top of the pigment layer. The photomicrographs reveal that the layer formation, almost like an incrustation, is not uniform because, as you can see, there's small spots which are of the pigment layer underneath, which are still visible. This information gave us the areas that required greater care and a controlled treatment. Next slide, please. As the next step, spectral information of the pigments was collected through a two-step approach, the first one being multispectral imaging. These images were taken before the treatment took place. The UV fluorescent image depicts a dark, almost like a purple fluorescence due to the alteration of pigment. Literature suggests that red lead does not have any fluorescence. It appears like a dark blotch. But in this paintings, because of the fluorescence, there is this slight reflection. So UV light is reflecting back in the visible region. And if you look at the IR image, the infrared image, it appears dark. Next slide, please. Now, when we move on to observe the spectra of the altered pigment, unaltered pigment, and the altered pigment after treatment, there is an increase in the reflectance of the treated pigment. The altered pigment appears to have almost a flat spectra and poor reflectance. So reflectance is depicted by the height of the spectra, which is on the y-axis. And if you follow the blue line, the dashed blue line, it is quite low when you compare it with the orange or the green line. The orange line depicts the reflectance of the pigment, altered pigment after the treatment, and the green line depicts the red lead, which is our from a reference database. If you notice the orange and green spectra, they have an inflection point near 565 nanometer, which is same as unaltered red lead. Moving on, next slide, please. In the next step, we documented the elemental concentration of the treated areas by portable X-ray fluorescence. The plot shows sulfur and lead, the peaks being at 2.3 keV and 10 electronic volts, respectively. This corroborates the presence of the deteriorating agent, that is sulfur. It was present in quite a high concentration. Next slide, please. The elemental concentration comparison before, and this is after the treatment, previous was before, did not give a stark difference. It could be attributed to the minimally interventive treatment carried out. There was a net difference of 2000 ppm decrease in the sulfur concentration in the area after the treatment. All in all, the increase in reflectance was highly appreciated. I would now like to invite Ratan to talk a bit about the conservation treatment and the results.
So, the treatment, so the
I'd
analysis
like
wouldn't have been complete if we didn't do the didn't understand or analyze the treated area. So for that, a conservation treatment was done. For that, a preliminary examination, both from visible light, raking light, and then photographic and documentation examination was done. The cleaning of the painting was done to in order to minimize the surface accumulation. After that, upon discussing with the custodian of the paintings, it was decided to go ahead with using a mild oxidizing agent onto the areas. It was very selective and it only targeted on the areas that had a lot of this or had a lot of alteration. It was only done to minimize this alteration. After the successful treatment, we consolidated all these areas and a lining of paper was also given to this painting in order to provide additional support to the already fragile support of the painting. So finally, the results were obtained. The visible image, so like you can see in this image, it is the image of a pigment alteration once treated in multispectral imaging. So the visible image of Lord Krishna, Krishna's robe appears orange. It cannot be claimed whether the original color was restored. Well, technically, it cannot be as the chemical change that took place is irreversible. However, as was seen in the spectra, the reflectance and the shape of the spectra were similar to those of red lead. The UVF or the UV fluorescence image shows an overall dark fluorescence, whereas in the IR image, the light is reflected quite well as the robe appears almost white in the visible, almost white in the IR light. The degradation was in other areas such as skin. So if you see in this image, so the skin of the lady is now better or more clearer than it was before. The person standing behind the lady in the pillars, the one who has the orange turban, uh, the microscopic image is from that area. So if you see the before image, it has a slight grayish haze over to it. And after the treatment, that grayish haze now has become very minimal. So
Sorry,
then
can I ask
coming
you
on,
this to be the last slide?
yes, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, we need to in view of the time. I think we have to move on
Okay,
to the next
just
speaker. But I can give, yeah.
just one more minute. Okay. So we already discussed the difference in the reflectance. So I would now like to conclude. So the scientific analysis is not just a secondary tool. It is a crucial tool for long-term conservation of Indian miniature paintings and to treat these artworks. A common challenge that we encounter in this study was particularly in those areas that contained pigment uh, lead-based pigment. So lead-based pigments are highly prone to chemical alteration, which can lead to the formation of lead sulfide, causing vibrant colors to visibly darken. Through scientific investigation, we can see that these altered pigments show distinct spectral changes in the reflectance, which allows us to accurately diagnose the extent of the damage. Based on these findings, we can then develop precise conservation treatment to restore the original optical properties of the pigment in both reflectance and multispectral imaging. To achieve this, we rely on the suite of non-invasive analytical techniques. We used MSI, and in order to reveal the hidden details, X-ray fluorescence, and for elemental analysis of FORS. Ultimately, the findings from this work do more than just save a single painting. It actually contributes in saving other paintings. And there is also scope of further study because we had limited time and resources. Maybe a better study can be done it can be done in future on these paintings when we get time and maybe more resources. I would now like to thank you for the presentation, for
Thank you so
letting us
much.
present the presentation, and sorry for taking too much time. Thank you.